I talked to a woman whose now ex-fiance suggested a baby weight clause, which are illegal. Like there was a certain period that she had in order to lose the baby weight.
Can you imagine you find that out after? Is like that's his expectation?
I could throw up. That's so gross. I will break up this wedding if you don't. Welcome to Broadlines,
A weekly video podcast by the Female Quotient.
where real headlines meet real conversation.
I'm Ray Williams, an entertainment, lifestyle, and culture journalist.
I'm Natalie Lizarraga, a journalist and news anchor. Today we are talking about the ring, the dress, the Pinterest board, and the prenup. We cannot wait to get started with this conversation. We actually asked around to people just in the streets what was the first thing they thought of when they heard the word prenup. So let's take a look.
What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word prenup?
Where do I sign?
I want one.
Saving money.
Smart.
Safety. Safety for women, safety for everyone involved. You want to keep your assets safe.
The Drake song.
Make sure you hit them with the prenup.
Yes. If I got married older, I for sure do it. Your money's your money. You have no idea what's going to happen in life, especially if you're someone who invests in your own career.
Women should make men's side prenups because women are out here making money.
Okay, I think it's so interesting because I was expecting a lot more negative reaction, and it looks like when you hit the streets, you got a lot more positive reaction.
Yeah, everybody was like really into it. But what I noticed is that even though people were into it, it kind of felt like they didn't feel like it maybe applied to them. So they were like, oh yeah, like great idea if you're older. Great idea if you have a lot of money or if you're the successful one or that kind of thing. So it was interesting.
So we're going to try to break down some of those old ways of thinking because a lot of people still probably have those buried in there. We're going to break down what we used to think of them and why this actually might be the smartest financial decision you can make before walking down the aisle.
And to break it all down, of course, we have a special guest. Nicole Lapin is here with us. She is a New York Times bestselling author and host of Money Rehab podcast. So welcome, Nicole. We're going to get into it.
Thank you for joining us. We're getting right into it. You saw those reactions there for the people on the
I
street.
liked them.
Yeah.
What's
really
your
positive.
first word, though?
When I think prenup, I think clarity. I think it's not about preparing for divorce. It's about preparing for the marriage. And it's so important to have clarity going into any adult relationship. Every adult relationship has agreements and boundaries, right? You have a lease with your landlord. You have a contract with your employer. Why wouldn't you have a financial operating agreement with the most important financial decision that you're ever going to make, which is your spouse?
And so for those people who don't know or are kind of new to the concept of a prenup, what exactly is that?
So a prenuptial agreement is a legally binding contract that you sign before marriage, and it covers income. It also covers debt in the case of death or divorce. So this is an agreement that you have ideally when things are lovey-dovey, you're in a good spot, so that a judge or courtroom isn't going to decide what's happening in your specific situation when things get bad.
Yeah.
And by the way, everybody has a prenup.
Whether you make it or not.
Whether you make it or not, it's the state's law that is your default prenup. And most people don't even realize what that state's law is.
Yeah.
Wow.
What is it in California?
It's a community property state. So essentially everything is 50-50. But if you want to make your rules for your own relationship, it's a prenup. And I don't know about you guys, but I want to make the rules for my own life, especially when it comes to what happens in my marriage.
Yeah. What's the biggest myth you think that is going around right now about prenups?
I think that it's between an old guy protecting himself from a gold digger. I think that more and more women, as you guys talk about all the time, are starting businesses, creating real equity in those businesses, have a lot to protect, have a lot at stake. And so my prenup was ready to go. And yes, women are marrying later. I got married and had a baby at 40.
Same.
My prenup was ready to go, though.
I did not have one ready to go. But now I'm rethinking a lot of things because it's like, it's not romantic or it's not pessimistic. It's smart.
I think that having an intimate conversation about your money is one of the most romantic things that you can do, because you're really talking about the life that you're going to build together. And everybody needs an operating manual and operating agreement for something like that.
There's a lot of studies that show like 83% of people who get a prenup, couples that get a prenup, actually feel like it's beneficial to their relationship. But as I just said, like a lot of people think it's a jinx or it's pessimistic. Why do you need that if you're not going to get divorced? Like you're prematurely thinking of a failure, right? How do we reframe that for women and for couples out there?
I don't think a prenup is planning for divorce. It's planning for what you want in your marriage. And one of the most dangerous things that women can do going into a relationship financially, especially if they're planning to take time out to be in the home, is not adding a homemaker clause. It's one of the things that's often overlooked when dealing with prenups. And staying at home, caretaking, household management absolutely is a job. If you were to outsource those things, it would be $100,000 to $150,000 a year.
It's insane how much childcare can be. And like you said, the invisible work that someone is doing at home how do you quantify that in a prenup?
You just do that. You quantify exactly what that is in a prenup, and you can have different provisions. So you can have different types of built-in spousal support. You can have an accelerated vesting of equity for the time that you're out of the workforce. You can have more division of property to compensate for the time that you're potentially out of the workforce, or they were out of the workforce, or who knows what's going to happen. But it's important to think about all of these things again before you walk down the aisle when things are lovey-dovey and you're in a good place. Sometimes people also put in provisions for a mediation clause, and that saves a lot of money down the road too. So it stipulates that you should go to mediation before going into litigation, which is obviously super duper expensive. So these are things that you want to talk about, not in a contentious way, but in a way that says, hey, babe, we're a team, and this is the type of relationship. These are the agreements. These are my financial values that I want reflected, and I want to decide. I don't want the state of California or state of New York or any state. And by the way, you should check what those state laws are.
I know, because I didn't even know.
Yes.
I have a question for you. Do you think that it makes, because when people split, there's a lot of resentment on both sides. There's, there could be unpredictable behavior, but when it's written and you've already decided, hey, this is what, if we do split, here's what's happening. Do you think it makes it, more amicable? Because there's like, we can't stray from this paper. You can't backstab me or be dirty about it because we've already written out what it's going to look like.
Well, oftentimes there is also renewal clauses where you can relook at what that agreement was in 5 years or in 10 years. And I highly recommend those as well, because the marriage that you're getting into is not the marriage that it's going to become. So if somebody does leave the workforce, if somebody's business explodes, if they had an inheritance, these are all really important things to stipulate. And I think that couples that do have prenups are more likely to stay together because they're open and they're having those hard conversations early on. By the way, just the conversation of a prenup offers so much clarity into a relationship. How somebody talks about money, how they handle what those different scenarios are going to be is going to tell you a lot. I talked to a woman whose now ex-fiance suggested a baby weight clause, which are illegal. Like there was a certain period that she had in order to lose the baby weight. Stuff like that came up. You want to know before you get married.
I'm so glad this woman is not marrying this man.
I'm so glad that came up, because can you imagine you find that out after? Is like that's his expectation. Like so much so that he wanted to put it in a legal document. But speaking of that, what can you, because when I think of like a prenup, I think of like so many fun things that you could throw in. And I have a couple of friends who have like what I think are a couple of like fun things in their prenups. What can you legally, what can you actually legally put in a prenup?
So a lot of the other fun ones are like infidelity clauses or sex clauses or, how often do we visit in-laws, stuff like that.
Oh my God.
Those are not usually upholdable in the court of law. So those are big red flags. You can put in whatever you want into the document.
Right.
But those things and stuff like the weight clause.
My question was to you was like, what's the craziest thing you've seen or heard? But is that it? Or is there more?
That's the worst one that I've seen. And that was like, I will break up this wedding if you don't.
Wait, so did you say the infidelity clause is not legally Interesting.
Judges will throw that type of stuff out because the protection that you have, is for the assets, for the income, for the property, for the debt, which is also really, really important to think about because you're not going in saying, hey, well, I don't have enough to protect, so I don't need a prenup, which is what we heard from the video.
Yeah.
You're also protecting yourself from what your significant other brings into the relationship, good and bad. So if they bring in debt, if you just got out of debt, so if you're at zero and they have a boatload of debt, then you're actually ahead of them.
Yeah.
Typically, debt is considered separate property, but if you pay for the debt together, it could come back to you. They could want almost like a refund or a reimbursement for it. If you co-sign together, another sneaky thing is any tax debt. So when you start filing together, that then becomes yours too. So all of these things that are definitely not fun and sexy to think about are less fun and sexy to think about later on when things are bad and you're fighting.
And is there a certain amount of money? Because I think we heard in this, people are pretty favorable, but like I said, the sentiment that I kind of heard was like, if you have a lot of money or if you are the woman making money or if you, are ahead, that type of thing. Is there an actual number that you have to have in your bank account to get up? Like if I am like negative $75, can I still get a prenup?
Absolutely. There's no magic number. It's about protecting what you have, what they are bringing into the relationship, don't forget. So you could stipulate that you don't want any part of that debt. You are not going to take it on. You're also potentially building a business with that negative $75. Like, why do you have negative $75? Is because you bootstrapped your own business. It's really, really important for female entrepreneurs in particular to think about what their business valuation is before a marriage. Let's double click on this for a second, if we can, because this is something that's often overlooked. The way that a business is valued, there's different methodologies for that. There's an asset valuation, there's an income valuation, and then there's a market valuation. And the way that the valuations are calculated are usually more favorable to one side than the other. Now, I'm not saying like you should try to get the lower valuation of your business going in so that later on they don't have a big stake in it. We're going into this marriage, right? Being upstanding, we want everybody to have what you guys decide. It's like not my marriage. It's whatever makes the most sense for you. But really think about what those different types of valuation methods are. And you also want to think about the date that that valuation happens. So if you're growing your business, an asset valuation is typically going to be the lowest type of valuation. An income valuation is going to be higher, especially if it accounts for goodwill. So that's like, if you have a podcast business or if you're a social media creator, that goodwill is that like X factor where you are the product. And typically that can be valued really high. So if you're in a situation where you are your business and that's where the big value is, then you're going to want to try and have that goodwill clause taken out if you go with an income-based valuation, because otherwise it's going to be valued much higher. And that's not something that you want to deal with in the court of law. You want to decide what that valuation looks like early on. And you also want to decide when that valuation happens. So a few different dates, either in the date of separation, the date of divorce filing, or the date that the divorce closes. So the longer a divorce takes, if you have a bomb tech company, that valuation is going to grow in those couple years.
What's something that people are putting in their prenup that they shouldn't, and kind of vice versa? What's something that should absolutely be in there from just the base level start of getting one?
You shouldn't put in those fun clauses, whether
But they're fun.
I know they are so fun, like a date night clause. Let's not put that in there. Just talk to your significant other about what you hope those expectations are. Actually, pet clauses or pet custody has been quite popular, and judges will adhere to whatever you want to happen to the dog or
that's a good idea.
Whatever animal you might have. And just make sure that you're thinking about what that homemaker clause is. It's one of the most important financial clauses that women can think about when talking about a prenup. And you just want to make sure that you have, let's say, a IRA that's a spousal IRA. So people think that going into a marriage, if you're out of the workforce, you can't have your own retirement account. You absolutely can. A spousal IRA is the same limit as a traditional IRA, so $7,000 a year. Over 30 years, that could be 300 grand. So you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And if you find yourself in that situation, always make sure that you're keeping up to date with your professional designation. So if you're in cosmetology school or you had a real estate license, that you're always keeping up to date with that type of stuff as well. So make sure that there's a homemaker clause in what makes sense for you and your situation.
So about half of prenup requests right now are actually being initiated by women. And I'm curious what you think is kind of driving, this kind of new wave of like women looking at it and being like, I need that. Because we know that, women are going to inherit a bunch of money, not inherit from people, but from, the financial sector, a bunch of money over the next couple of years. But besides that, what do you think is kind of like making people see that right now, women especially?
Women are creating more valuable businesses. We're coming into marriages later with more assets of our own, and we're going to be big beneficiaries of this big wealth transfer that we're going to see over the next couple of years. And so there's more at stake here. I don't think this is about divorce planning. This is about finally understanding what our worth is and asking for it.
Yeah. My next question was kind of the same. We're coming in with better jobs, more money, inheritance. How does that change what the modern prenup is looking like for women these days as opposed to maybe before?
I don't think it's that paradigm of a rich old dude and,
Our favorite, like, visual one.
Right? Why do we have that?
No, he's like in Monaco in a Ferrari, and she's like
that's the only way it
25
exists.
with, like a very small Chanel. I don't know. I feel like those are the people that like, and I think our vision of it like heavily, like unfavors the woman. Like it's always like she's the problem and therefore the prenup is to protect him from her. I think that's like the traditional.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are, certainly there are income disparities in relationships that you have. And sometimes it's stipulated because one spouse has a big family business or they're going to have an inheritance coming up, or maybe their board actually stipulates that they have to do this. There are companies that will require officers and executives to have a prenup or have some sort of like what's going to happen to this board seat, for instance. And so we're coming in with that paradigm that's shifted completely. We're also building equity. We're also building businesses. Some people definitely have family businesses, inheritances, companies whose board requires them to have the prenup. But what you should be really aware of if you're in that situation, if you're at the other side of that situation, you always have to have your own lawyer. Always. So if somebody's like, here, have my family lawyer. Or here's my recommendation. Like, this is not a time to get I'm all about a discount, but not a discount lawyer in this scenario. So I would say, number one, make sure you always have your own lawyer. And by the way, you have to. That sometimes if you don't, that will be invalid.
I see.
So always have your own independent lawyer. Each side has to have one. Always read every line. And I don't say this like to be pejorative. I hate reading contracts. My husband actually makes fun of me all the time. He's like, did you actually read this or did you just DocuSign it? Right? I'm like, it's fine. It's boring. I don't want to read a contract, but this is one. Please read every single line of what you're agreeing to, just as a reminder. And the third thing is that everything is negotiable. Every clause is negotiable. There's no standard in a prenup. So if somebody is telling you, no, this is a standard, this is not negotiable, this is just the way it needs to be, no, that is false. And so always be aware if you're in that type of power dynamic, what the vibe is around that. And you can always push back and you can always negotiate.
That's good advice that you might, obviously, maybe you've never been here before and someone's telling you, no, this is just how it is. It's standard. But knowing you can negotiate any part of it is like solid advice.
Are there any other things that like, say, a woman is getting married and maybe the family is, kind of like coaxing her into the prenup, or, it's kind of like this, you're not getting married without it. Like you have to do the prenup and it's on the man's side. Is there anything else that she should be doing or looking for to kind of protect herself in that situation? Or even get leverage.
I mean, the red flag there is if somebody's trying to force you to sign a prenup right before the wedding, that's a huge red flag. A month going in, right?
Dinner.
No. No.
Wow.
And also if they're suggesting their own lawyers. No. Those are big
Red
red
flags.
flags. If somebody is hesitant to talk about a prenup or sign a prenup, that's not necessarily an automatic red flag, but I want to know why. If they're hesitant because they want to do more research, then that's a human reaction. That seems fine. But if they're hesitant because they're just like, I'll just trust me, that is not a financial plan.
Yeah.
Just trust me is not a financial
Yeah.
plan. And so that is a big red flag because this conversation should be really loving. We could even role play if you want.
Well, I was just going to get into that. So let's say, you have to have the conversation. And you don't want to think it's like a jinx to your marriage. You're like, let's just have it naturally. Where are we going? How are we having it? What's our approach? What's our tone? Like, lay out everything
Okay.
for us.
Yes. Okay, because you're, in a serious relationship.
Obviously, we talk about like a lot of the episodes when we're preparing and stuff like that. And I told him that this episode was prenup. And I was like, do you want a prenup? And he was basically like, yeah, if you want one, yeah, we should get one. But that's the extent of the conversation. So, I in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, he wants a prenup. I want a prenup. We'll get one. But I never thought of the intimate part of the conversation. Like, what are we actually putting in there? How do we talk about it?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I love the timing, tone, and turf. This is not my saying. This is Emily Morse from Sex with Emily. And I love alliteration. I started as a poetry major. So timing, tone, and turf. So timing is not, in the middle of an engagement trip where you're, drunk and whatever. But it's also not after a fight. And you're not coming in it with the tone of, I'm a lawyer, here's my PowerPoint presentation. My lawyer told me that I need this. This is not something that you win. A prenup is not a conversation you win. It's a prenup that you have as a plan together. This is a group project, after all. All of marriage is a group project, but this in particular. And the turf is somewhere you're home, really comfortable. And it's like, hey, baby, I'm really thinking a lot about our financial future. And I can't wait to build a life with you. And we're going to be teammates here. I was listening to this amazing podcast, Broadlines, and they were talking about prenups. Is that something that you would want to do? I'd love to look into this together.
No.
It's a tone of curiosity.
What if they say immediately no?
Okay, well, that is a
Okay,
beige
yeah.
flag.
Okay, beige. Okay, good.
Beige flag. Oh, okay.
Okay, then the other option is, okay, tell me more.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's look into it together. Should we listen to the podcast? I think that I'd love to hear more about what you're thinking about with our big financial dreams. What do you want? These are about dreams, right? Dreams have price tags. So I think going into the conversation with what are your values? And by the way, this is a conversation that you must have before you walk down the aisle. Did you Google your significant other before you went on a date?
Oh yeah. He was well stocked.
Right? Well stocked.
Well stocked.
Why would you not pull a credit report for him before you got married, right?
Yeah, I haven't
Not yet.
his credit report yet, but
Have a full net worth conversation. So what is net worth? It's assets minus liabilities. What are the things you're bringing into this relationship minus what are the things that you owe? Who do you owe? What are those conversations around? How do you think about family money? Are there going to be inheritances coming up? What do you want to do with your money? Money without meaning is just paper.
Yeah.
And so what is that meaning to you? That's something to get on the same page about.
And when exactly do you do that? Because we just said a while ago, like if someone is trying to get you to sign a prenup the night before the wedding or at the rehearsal dinner, that's probably a red flag. But how far in advance? We're obviously not engaged yet.
Is he listening?
Oh, he's listening. We're not engaged
She's
yet.
not trumping hints at all. She's just speaking relatively.
But when do you start the process of putting that prenup
Asking
together?
for a friend. Yeah. I think the conversation should start right before you get engaged or shortly after.
Interesting. Okay, so that far in advance.
I think you're doing it exactly right. You're testing the waters. You're talking about it. You're saying, I've been hearing about this. Love to hear your thoughts. I think the tone is really curious, right?
Yeah.
It's not judgy. It's like, I'm really curious about all the tools because this is a tool, right, that will help us in our marriage together and all of our financial hopes and dreams. And there are other tools that you have to think about too. A will, advance directive. These are not fun conversations for sure, but they're important ones to
Yeah.
have.
I have a question for you because I've seen this come up in our research. Like, obviously, for the average person, a lawyer might be expensive to do this, but there are apps that you can do it on. Is there a difference in quality if you're going through an app and you're just, answering the questions here and signing it that way? Is it still as ironclad as having a lawyer draw it up?
So I really like Hello Prenup for very simple prenups. Also, you can draft one using Hello Prenup and take it to a lawyer too, which saves a lot of the back and forth. You never want to like brainstorm with a lawyer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Billable hours.
Yeah. I know my lawyer friends would be like, well.
Yeah.
I've made so many mistakes talking to my lawyer about my feelings and then seeing the bill later. So that's just smart to iron out what you want it to say as cost effectively as
Right.
possible. But Hello Prenup will do it all in probably for $2K. If they also include the soup to nuts version, which is having independent lawyers for each side. So I think it's about $600 for your draft and then $700 each to get a lawyer on each side to take a look at
And
it.
maybe something that you can do together where you're like, we're answering these as a unit. It makes you feel more of a unit where you're like, let's answer these questions together on what we both want.
And instead attention.
It might feel intimidating to be like, I got a lawyer to do this or to do that. And it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's a lot more casual now that you can just do it on your phone.
Yeah, and it's a really important like pay attention during that questionnaire too, because these little clues are some things that you're going to want to know before you get married, of course. If you have a more complicated situation, like in the scenarios that we talked about with owning a business or, having a board for your business or having a big family company or an inheritance that's coming up, then you're going to want to hire going to want to hire a lawyer outside of the app, and that's potentially going to run you like $5 to $10K.
Can you do it lawyerless? Like, is there like a poor man's version of the prenup that you could do? I mean, you kind of like, I guess, see in movies, people like draft up these things and each person signs it. What actually makes it legal and binding? Is that having a lawyer there, or can something be legal and binding if, you and I just sit together and be like, okay, well, let's do this and say this and sign it?
You have to have a lawyer. I know those ones on a napkin are
something like that. Yeah.
Out of a movie.
Yeah, the lawyer finalizes it on both sides, and having your own independent lawyer
Okay.
is so important.
Let's say there's women out there, speaking from experience, that did not get a prenup. Is it too late? And what can we do to kind of protect our financial future?
It's not too late. You'll want to look at a postnuptial agreement, which is essentially the same thing, but after marriage. Or you can look into some different financial engineering around a will. Do you guys have a will? A trust?
So we should.
Yes.
Yes, we
Definitely. You have a baby.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for sure. You want to, and my husband and I did this actually like the day before I gave birth, and it was crazy. You have to think about, if something happens to you,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
who's going to be the guardian, all
Right.
these like not fun conversations, but it's important to just get on the same page about what that is. Advanced directives, like what do you want to happen? All these types of things.
Yeah.
Property titling,
All the sad stuff.
beneficiary stuff. I know this.
I know. All the sad stuff, but it's so necessary.
Yeah. Business idea for somebody, like have a summer camp where you can like go with your partner for like a week.
Do all of the
And you
paperwork.
you do all the paperwork, talk about all the things. There's like a therapist there. You drink some wine, like, you have a date night, so everybody feels good, and you get all that shit out of the way
Yeah,
there really
no.
quick.
It's like, those are tough
Great
conversations.
business idea.
Especially if you have kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can look into a postnuptial if you want, and it just depends on what your goals are.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know that people who are already married and maybe listening and are like, oh, I messed up, but you can still go back and get a postnup, which will have the same stuff as a prenup, right? It's just delayed.
Some states don't recognize postnups. That's why these conversations, again, you think you know somebody so well, but until you go through that questionnaire on Hello Prenup or whatever and go through all of the nitty gritty, you really just, and maybe all of the answers that you have or you do together are exactly as you imagined. Amazing. I love that for you.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not, and in which case, we're breaking up the wedding.
Yeah. We'll be at the three of us will be at the top of the aisle, like, But you also mentioned pulling a credit score on that person. Like we stalk them, like before we go on a first date. What other kind of financial stalking should we be doing besides just the credit score? when we first get into relationships. So maybe not even, we're getting engaged yet, but even before.
Do you know whose name is on all the utility bills?
Mine.
Okay.
A lot of the things are in my name by default, but is that something that you should be like?
Talk about just vis-a-vis your credit score,
Mhm.
and so this ends up happening, fast forward to women in particular who are stepping out of the workforce. And if, God forbid, they go through a divorce, all of the bills were under their partner's name. They didn't
Yeah.
rack up a credit score.
Mm.
Or if the bills were under your name, but they weren't being paid
Mm-hmm.
without your knowledge, then that ruined your credit score.
Yeah.
And so you're building your credit history, which is one of the most important financial numbers that you have. It's tied to the interest rate on any loan that you get. So your mortgage, a business loan,
Mm-hmm.
it's based on, you'll get a lower rate if your credit score is higher. And so you want to just protect that. And one of the ways to accumulate great credit is on time payment history. And so if you're paying the bills on time, but your name isn't on them, then you're going to want to take advantage of that on-time payment history too.
Is it a red flag if your partner doesn't want to sign a prenup?
I think it's not a red flag. It's just a beige flag. Really understand why. What's the underlying reason for that?
Mhm.
Is it just because they want control? Is it because they say, just trust me?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be fine. This feels like this is planning for divorce
Yeah.
or divorce insurance, and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an adult conversation. That
Mhm.
is something else under the surface. But if they just want more research, or if they want to do their own homework or listen to the podcast on their own, then I think that's fine. I think it's not a deadline, right? Allow somebody the time and space to digest this type of conversation on their own. It brings up a lot of feelings for sure. But at the end of the day, this is having a healthy relationship around one of the most taboo topics there is, which is money. We'll talk about everything before we talk about money typically.
Yeah.
And so you guys can think you're really, really close and you've talked about your deepest, darkest secrets and all of your trauma and whatever. But have you talked about financial infidelity? Do they owe somebody money that you don't know about? What is in their credit report? What are their assets? What are their liabilities really? Like,
Yeah.
have you seen their brokerage account? Have you seen their bank account? And so that's just taking that intimacy up a notch. And this conversation around prenups should be very collaborative. The biggest red flag of a prenup is having a one-sided document, right? That protects one side more than the other. And as we're building empires together now, it's not that old paradigm of one rich person and one person who's
right.
marrying that person for the money.
Yeah.
We're both building and working, and potentially one of us is going to step out of the workforce. And what does that look like? And how can we protect ourselves around that too?
Okay, what are some green flags to look out for when it's the wording? I mean, I think you said a lot about it being collaborative and not one-sided, which is a good one. And like, what am I looking for when I'm drafting it for? And I think this is just for the average person. Maybe let's say you don't own a business, you're just two people in the workforce, but you want to protect what you're making. What am I looking for, and what should I absolutely have covered?
If you have debt, if your significant other has debt, you want to make sure that you have that covered. So what ends up happening sometimes with debt is that there's commingling. So if somebody's paying that debt off from a joint account, then that can become messy.
Yeah.
So just clarify that up front. Think about spousal support too. This is an important time to think about that. Again, not in the heat of a fight or icky divorce, or have a courtroom judge decide what 10 years of you raising your family meant.
Yeah.
And so decide those types of things in advance. Those are the most important things to come on the same page about.
And so if you're marrying into money, the dream, no, I'm kidding. If you're marrying into money, what are some of the things, and of course they're maybe demanding a prenup as well, what are some of the things that you can kind of get, if you will?
So 3 things if you are getting pressured by a rich family to sign a prenup. The first one is to have your own independent lawyer, not the lawyer that they recommend, not like our family friend, not their recommendation, your own lawyer. The second thing is to make sure you really read through this carefully and you understand the document, even with your lawyer, that you are signing. What are the agreements you're coming up with? And what are you okay with and what are you not? The third thing is remember that all of those clauses that are in that prenup are negotiable, every single one. And don't let anybody tell you that they're not negotiable, because they absolutely are. Nothing in a prenup is standard. The whole point of a prenup is that it's your standard, not the law's standard, because you default to what that state law is if you don't have your own prenup. So absolutely nothing is standard. Everything is customizable. So just remember that you can negotiate and you should negotiate if you have a family pressuring you.
It's individualized for each person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned earlier, just out of curiosity, you said there are, for instance, visitation clauses in some prenups. If you're marrying into such a family, for example, and there are going to be children in the future, is that also something that you can stipulate? Like, the kids will, still have access to their grandparents or visit a certain amount of time or something like that?
I don't think you can control people in these types of documents.
I was wondering,
People
'cause-
try all the
Yeah.
time around this, but it's really intended to protect assets,
More assets,
property, and debt. And the stuff that gets cute is really fun to talk about. And sometimes you can feel like that's an obligation that must be signed, but it doesn't need to
Yeah,
be.
that would be my dad's clause in like any prenup. It's like I will see my grandkids every summer for 6 months. Like, you can have them, Dad.
But also remember that it's not just in the case of divorce, it's in the case of death too. So
Well, yeah, we are focusing on divorce.
look, well, neither of them are fun to think about or talk about, but especially when there are kids involved, you want to think about what happens in the worst case scenario. And in a lot of states, there's a division that's automatic around a third to a half of the other person's estate. And not, you don't even need to call it that, but what they own.
Yeah.
And so even if you have a will that says, hey, all of my stuff is going to go to my kids, but you don't have a prenup, then that could potentially get contested by the surviving spouse. So you just want to make sure that all of these documents are in order, from a will to the advance directive, trust, prenup,
All the things.
close snap.
I'm late in camp. I'm holding out for the summer camp.
Just invent it.
And guys, we're going to go to summer camp and drink wine and
Just
make
like a long
popsicles and
weekend.
sign prenups. That's what we're going to do.
To me, so many women have been blindsided by terrible situations. Also, so many women have not been blindsided by terrible situations. But a just in case, a fuck you money, a parachute fund,
Parachute fund.
always important.
Oh, I haven't
They're
heard that one
always
yet.
important
Parachute
to
fund.
have.
Tell me more. I haven't heard that, like that terminology yet.
Yeah, it's just reframing for whatever makes sense for you, to know that you have your own back no matter what happens. And I think this is a conversation. This is not a secret account situation. You should talk about it. And I think your partner should want you to have your own money and also want you to have your own back.
Right.
I think that there's a balance in any relationship, right? Between being dependent, which is like codependent. We don't want all that. Independent. So like, why the heck are we even in a relationship? And intradependent. So we need each other, but we also want our own space to have our back, and our partner in a healthy relationship that values boundaries and agreements should want that too.
Okay, we have a game that is basically, you say fuck yes or fuck no.
Okay.
Okay. Talking about money before marriage is more romantic than a proposal.
Fuck maybe? Like, can they both be romantic?
Yeah, they can.
I do often get that fuck maybe.
You should know your partner's credit score before you know their middle name.
I'll just say fuck yeah.
Money differences are a bigger divorce risk than infidelity.
Fuck yes to both. Financial infidelity is real.
Okay, you find out your partner has $200,000 in secret debt. Are you still walking down the aisle?
Fuck no. What do you mean?
Like, no.
I said the same thing when we were going over this. I was like, fuck no. Like, you're not walking. You're just, I could see you walking down the aisle just into a pit. Because, like, interest on the payments. Everything's going to get more if they're not paying it off and they already have $200,000 of debt.
And this is why we have friends and lawyers and podcasts.
That's right.
Nicole to tell us what's going on.
Okay, you're madly in love but financially incompatible. Do you think, though, love conquers all?
Fuck no. Fuck no.
Your partner's bank account is more important than their body count.
Oh my God. Fuck yes.
You can tell the ones I came up with. Sorry, guys.
Having an infidelity clause in a prenup.
Fuck no.
Splitting the bill on the first date tells you everything you need to know about a person.
Not everything, but fuck no on splitting for me.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Especially a first date.
I know.
I mean, there's like casual, like, I got this, but like a first date is like, that's your first impression.
Yeah.
And that ain't a good one, I don't think.
Not for you and not for me. But you know what? If that is fine for you, then we don't have to be in your marriage.
What's mine is yours is a beautiful sentiment, but a terrible financial strategy.
Fuck yes.
Marrying someone when you yourself has debt is a no-no.
Fuck no.
Unless it's not $200,000.
Yeah.
And debt.
Let's not tell them about
Disclose that, please.
Yeah, disclose said debt before you walk down the aisle. Okay, a woman who out-earns her partner should be the one to bring up the prenup.
No, fuck no. Not necessarily.
What's the danger of getting married without a prenup? What you would say?
Fucking hell.
I love that. Sorry.
Because we've talked about getting
Financial
up, but there are plenty of people who walk down the aisle and do not even consider getting one.
Sometimes it works out
Mhm.
and that's great. But are we like just is this a prayer or is this a financial plan?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing here?
Thank you so much for being here with us. And we hope the takeaways for you are just consideration of a prenup if you're in that situation, just some demystifying around it to know that it's not something that's overwhelming and scary. It's not this old school, gold digger versus, nice old rich guy. It's a lot different in a society where women are making money and starting businesses. So hopefully you get some good takeaways.
Yeah, I think my takeaway is to get one. I think you plan all these things with your wedding, and everything you plan for a wedding is expensive. Just everything. When someone says, I just remember people be like, that's an extra $1,000. I'm like, that feels like 10 cents more when you're getting married because everything is so expensive. So add that if you're doing Hello Prenup or whatever app, add that $2,000 to the budget of your wedding and make sure that you get it done, because it's just like going to pick up your marriage license. Like, you have to do it. You have to pay for it. And so it should just be added to the to-do list, it feels like.
And I think that it gives you a lot of clarity for the person that you're marrying. A lot of religions will also have you sit down and have these in-depth talks about finances and values. And I think that you're not going to overdo those types of conversations before you make the biggest financial decision. And I truly believe who you marry is the most important financial decision you will ever make. You're not going to overdo those conversations there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Broadlines.
A production of the Female Quotient, filmed in Los Angeles.
If you like this episode, and I know you did, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
If you have a question, maybe a work question, or you have an idea for an episode,
DM us at Female Quotient or leave a comment to get the conversation started.
hit that follow button while you're there.
See you next week.